What's up, guys? So, today we'll be talking about the American Revolution. So, let's get started with today's video. The Revolution was basically a major conflict in the late 18th century, which is just 1701 all the way to the 1800s. So, in the late 18th century, so we'll just write that 18th cent for century. In It was where the 13 British colonies in North America at that time, now we have 50 states, but at that time, 13 British colonies in North America fought for their independence from British rule. This included escalating disputes over representation, taxation, political rights, which led to war, even eventual independence, and the founding of the United States. The war lasted from 1775 to 1783. If we do the math, it's about okay, it's about emotional, damn it. Okay, about 7 years, but 8. 8 years. Woo, 8 years is a lot. So, lasted for 8 years. At the end, I'll have you take a screenshot if you want. I'll remove all the notes. I'll do it once with the notes and once without the notes. But we'll go on to the next slide. I don't know which one. I think this one's George Washington. No, it's this one. I have no idea. But let's go next. So, 13 colonies under British rule. Still about the American Revolution, but we're going to talk about a different topic. The first English colony was founded in 1607. 67. And by 17 colonies stretching along the east coast. East is just, let me write north, east, west. East is right, west is left, south is bottom, and north is top. So on the east, I even have a picture right here. It's lying on the east side because it's on the right side. They're stretching along the east coast. After the French and American Indian War, which ended in 1763, Britain imposed more direct control, which increased tensions. What this last line means is that British had taxes on the 13 colonies. This was the British rule, and that's why the topic name is 13 colonies under British rule. So let's go slide. So, new British taxes and protests. During that time, the people who lived in present day North America didn't like the taxes, but the British had to do what they had to do. To help pay debts from the war, Britain taxed the colonies through acts like the Stamp Act, the Sugar Act, and later the Tea Act. Colonists strongly opposed taxation without representation, leading to major protests such as the Boston Tea Party. So, right now, we have heard of 3 acts: the Stamp Act, Sugar Act, and Tea Act. But the most dangerous act of all time was the Tea Act, which led to the Boston Tea Party. So, let's learn Tea Act. Tea Act was basically the Boston Tea Party, which took place on 1773. It happened when a group of colonists dressed as Native Americans, specifically Mohawk Native Americans, and they threw 340 chests of tea into the Boston harbor to protest against unfair taxes by Britain. Well, it is unfair though. Britain should pay the debts by themselves. It's not fair that the Americans have to pay them. Not fair, bruh. But this act of rebellion was a response to the Tea Act, which allowed the British East India Company to sell tea directly to the colonies at a cheaper price but still taxed. The catch. Of course. So let me give an example. So there's tea at $100, okay, and it's taxed to make it $110. $110. British East India Company came in and said, okay, I'll sell it at $90. But the catch is that there'll still be a tax, maybe $20, maybe $10, but we'll get up to $100. It's cheaper price, but colonists believed that they shouldn't be taxed without having a say in government, which meant just taxation without representation, which means they don't want to pay taxes without representing in actual government. But we'll talk about that later. Let's keep reading in the purple box. Tea Party was a key event that led to the American Revolution. There was many more, like the Stamp Act, Sugar Act, and many more. But the Boston Tea Party was one of the main key events that led to the American Revolution, as it increased tensions between the colonies and Britain, and caused Britain to pass harsh laws called the Intolerable Acts. The Intolerable Acts was to punish the colonists. So the colonists that dressed up as Native Americans, they got caught at last. And the Intolerable Acts was just when they punished the colonists. So let's go on to the next slides as now we know the taxes and protests. That is the Boston Harbor where they threw the 342 chests of tea. Now let's talk about rebellion begins and preparing for war.